Brant's not so long awaited rerun is coming soon. But with all of the recent changes to Wuthering Waves' meta, one question still flows in the mind of many people. Is Brant still good after his initial release? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video, by talking about some of the best parts about Brant, and then some of the worst. One of the best parts about Brant is the fact that he is an incredible partner for one of the most popular characters in the game, being Changli. Changli is a character who is very much tailored around the dual DPS/quickswap playstyle, something a lot of people struggle to deal with, because quickswap is a playstyle that simply requires more effort than most other playstyles. However, Brant, with his perfect buffing for skills and fusion damage, comes to the rescue by being Changli's primary hypercarry buffer. Brant makes Changli a much better hypercarry than before, and essentially unlocks the playstyle for her. Changli usually isn't that good in a hypercarry team, usually being played in dual carry with characters like Shangli, Colcharo, or even Phoebe. So, the hypercarry playstyle usually kind of gets left to the wayside, and when you do try to play it, if you don't have Brant, you're stuck with characters like Zhezha and Cantarella, whose buffing isn't really that good for Changli, especially since her damage floor is simply lower, so she needs more buffs to compete if she's trying to hypercarry, and Brant exactly covers this issue, by having a better outro skill as well as having higher personal damage than all of these other sub-DPS characters, which fixes Changli's lower damage contribution by making up for it with Brant's own damage. And because Brant and Changli both have good damage outputs, you're even able to quickswap these two together. Instead of going for a classic hypercarry team, you can just play quickswap with Changli and Brant, which is actually better for tower. You see, Brant has some very good quickswap windows thanks to his mid-air flips, because after he uses one of his basic attacks, he automatically does a flip. This gives you an excellent amount of time to swap into Changli and then back into Brant again, meaning that not only is Brant good with Changli as a hypercarry, he's also one of the best options if you're trying to quickswap him with Changli. Another big benefit that Brant has to him is the fact that he's capable of buffing skill damage. Skill damage is a very occupied niche within DPSs, being occupied by 3 DPSs, being Changli, obviously, as well as Jinshi and Carlotta. This is more than any other damage type. Heavy attacks have Dian and Zani, Liberations only have Shangliao, and then you have basic attacks, which is just primarily Sanhua and Brant himself. So because skill damage is the most occupied when it comes to DPS characters, you want to have good skill damage buffers, and Brant is one of the better ones. While he's not as good of a generalist as Zhezha due to his longer rotation, he is still very competent at his job. He is the second best in slot when we're talking about trying to buff a Carlotta, thanks to his personal damage. He's also incredible when you're trying to play Jinshi, although you are forced to run Verena if this is the case. With Jinshi, you can even comfortably quickswap between Jinshi and Brant, because they're both aerial characters. Because usually, with characters that can't really do anything in the air, Brant can be a bit awkward to quickswap with. But because Jinshi is fully aerial, this is not an issue with her. So if you have any character that benefits from skill damage buffing, consider trying to use Brant with them if you're going for him. Another big benefit to Brant's existence is the fact that he is an incredible healer. And when I say an incredible healer, I don't mean that he's as good as Shorekeeper. That would be disingenuous of me to say. But saying that his healing isn't good would be even worse, because Brant, thanks to his healing and his shield, is able to keep you alive just fine on his own. His shield will often cover half of your health bar, which, I'm just saying, if you're at least a little bit competent in dodging, that should be more than enough for you. And while his healing only goes up to like 4000 HP per rotation, that should still be plenty to keep you alive in tandem with his shield. So if you're playing Brant in your team, you're not forced to run a healer like Shorekeeper or Verena. Obviously, a lot of people don't really value this point. They're either going to run their Shorekeeper or Verena anyway, or they're just going to dodge everything. But not everyone is that good at dodging, meaning that Brant's extra bit of utility in the defensive department can be very useful for a lot of people. But it's time to talk about some negatives for Brant, because obviously he's not a perfect character. And one of the biggest things that annoys me about this character is that this man I'm glad he doesn't use a gun, because he does not know how to aim. I'm sorry, but there's no better way to put this. This guy, sometimes he just misses for no reason. I don't know why he does it. Trying to use his intro skill? Good luck trying to hit anything with his epic shot. Trying to use his forte skill? Cool. So what if the enemy moves, and then you miss, and then you don't generate the concerto from your forte skill? That's honestly kind of foul. Simply missing one attack can completely break this man's rotation. And it's not like he doesn't miss at all. He misses pretty often actually, more so than I would like to admit. Brant, I'm sorry my mans, you are not cooking. And you think his forte skill and his intro were the only victim of this man's clunk? No. So, after his intro skill, he's supposed to start on his second aerial attack. This is kind of a big thing for his forte generation, because his second attack and his third attack are the best ones at generating forte. But sometimes, he will just do his first attack instead, not his second, which means you're wasting valuable time on an attack that you shouldn't be doing? I'm sorry, Brant, why are you doing your first attack? Your intro says you're supposed to start on your second. Why aren't you starting on your second? As you can tell from this point, this is something I've had to personally struggle with quite a bit. So yeah, essentially, Brant can be pretty clunky, let's just say that. Another big negative is that Brant is kind of a nightmare to build. Oh boy, trying to build this man is... there's horror stories, let me tell you. And it all comes from one itty-bitty thing within his abilities. And it is simply the fact that he has ER scaling. And not just any kind of ER scaling, a ridiculous amount of ER scaling. Especially because we have tide-breaking courage here to ruin our day. You see, his forte's attack buff caps out at 280% ER. However, tide-breaking courage starts activating at 250% ER. So if you're trying to run tide-breaking courage on him, you need between 250 and 280. Don't go over 280 and don't go below 250. That is a pretty strict requirement there, my guy. Especially when we consider the fact that energy regen on your free cost is statistically rarer than getting the correct damage bonus. So not only does he have a very specific requirement for one of his stats, this requirement is also simply harder to reach than trying to get damage bonus. And take it from me, I have like 20 fusion pieces just locked, and I only have one ER piece that I rolled, which ended up being the final one to use on my Brant. His ER needs are honestly so bad that if you are not using his signature weapon or overture, you simply cannot get the 250 ER for tide breaking. You cannot do it even if you have 5 ER rolls double main stats. You have to go to Molten Rift. Honestly, that's just kind of tragic if you ask me. And then the final point that I have for Brant actually links up with this point pretty well. And it's the fact that without his signature weapon, you get a massive damage drop on this man's. Yep, you've probably heard it a million times before. I even said it earlier. If you do not have his signature weapon, you cannot run tide breaking, which is yet another cut to his damage output. And Brant scales on ER more than he scales on any other stat except crit. His energy regen scaling is harder than damage bonus scaling. So let me tell you this, that ER on his signature weapon is ridiculous. You want it. Trust me on that one. Not having his signature weapon drops his damage down by 21%. And this assumes that you have Red Spring. If you don't have Red Spring, your damage is cut by 25%, trying to run Emerald of Genesis. Honestly, my mans, this is not okay. The damage drop Brant has going from his signature to the standard weapon is the highest currently in the game. So if you're going for Brant, be prepared to shill money for his signature. But what do you think of Brant? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. I'm pretty active in there, so any question you may ask, there's a pretty good chance I'll see it. But that'll be it from me. Peace.